So what happens, in the short story about this, we went back, this is based on about 6 or 7 years of research. We went back and mapped 10 big cycles of disruptive innovation. We went back to the Bronze Age in the 5th century B.C. and looked at the new technologies there, which were writing. You can just imagine, what was it like when you couldn't write? And then what happened when writing became adopted in society and all the other things that came after that. And so the story is that in these big cycles of disruptive innovation, you get new technologies. The new technologies begin to grab hold. You begin to get surges of new technologies. The technologies then impact the economy, and the economy goes through a big structural shift, which basically means it changes along all the major dimensions of whatever that economy is. What jobs are, how organizations are structured, what happens in capital markets. And then what happens after that is you continue to get new technologies, surges of new technologies. And where we are today, if you look at that blue line, all the social institutions begin to fail. And that's what we're experiencing today: healthcare, education, the criminal justice system, the governmental systems. How many of you are having this sense today that things seem to be falling apart? Is there anyone who thinks things aren't falling apart? It's always fun to hear from the contrarian. It's amazing when you think about it. And in some ways you think, oh, this is a terrible time to be alive. But in some ways, it's an exciting time to be alive. How many groups of humans really have the opportunity to reinvent society? We haven't had a disruptive cycle of innovation this big since the Middle Ages, 1,000 years ago. And if you remember the Middle Ages, when all of knowledge was locked up in the church, and you couldn't get knowledge out of the church, and so people didn't know how to think in very deep ways or interact very easily. And then we got the printing technologies, and all of a sudden all the knowledge was able to move out of the church, not just into the hands of people in, sort of in other kinds of common venues, but they were able finally, because of the penny press, to actually take information and knowledge into their homes. That totally transformed society, how people thought about themselves, their whole sense of human identity completely changed. And what they did after the Middle Ages was they had a renaissance. So what we actually have before us, we actually have the opportunity to have another renaissance. Now, I think that's exciting.